I think that is being a little bit overdone.
They're kind of the trifecta that I use every day.
It's time consuming, man.
It's my least favorite part of animation.
Whatever they make, I'm pretty much salivating over.
It just really amps up their piece and it really elevates it.
They have a language in and of themselves of how they look.
It's just one of those things that clients want.
On trend is kind of like a fickle thing to aim for. Like you should be looking at the brief that your client has. And that's how, trends start. If somebody goes, we want this really unique thing for this really unique client, and it has to be them and it has to have the soul of their project and their goals and their story. And through that, they create something that's really cool and everybody else goes, oh my gosh, I want to do that for my brand. But if you try and do that for a different brand and a different story, it's not going to have the same impact.
I can see two trends. One of them is coming back and the other one is just getting a little bit more notoriety. The one that I think that is coming back might be kinetic typography.
Kinetic typography.
Kinetic typography is also having a bit moments like people are swashing or stretching the type. They're doing really cool, very dynamic things with text.
I've just not seen that go away. And it has kind of evolved every year.
I've seen Google apps that is just amazing, just taking kinetic typography to a next level.
Kinetic typography is just one of those things that clients want.
In the 2D world, collage is having a bit moments, messing with proportions, bringing in real world elements into your animations.
Deep glow has become this buzzword that everybody just automatically by default applies deep glow to everything to make it beautiful. And I'm guilty of it too. I love deep glow, but I think that is being a little bit overdone.
The sort of Microsoft and Google probably maybe 3 or 4 years ago started coming out with these ads, these TVCs that were like a pastel room in 3D where all of the apps move together like this and they're all a bit semi-transparent.
I would say the fashion world is having a bit moment with animation, especially those 3D billboards that have been going viral on social media where it's like a sneaker that pops out of the billboard and it looks like it's actually in the real world environment, but it's actually just part of an LED screen. I think that's having a bit moments.
3D with 2D motion design. The computing power has gone up really drastically in the last, let's call it 10 years or since I started. So it's even easier to just render those sort of 3D unbelievable quality things with your personal computer.
And I think the more realistic style is still big in the 3D world, but in the 2D world, it's kind of gravitating towards cartoony, exaggerated proportions and that sort of thing.
But I'm ready to see what's next.
I say in 2025, collage and bringing in real world physical objects will still be a trend. I think people are kind of pushing back against the too digital of a look. So I think that's a good way of, rounding our sense of reality there.
I think the thing that I'm really interested by at the moment is interactivity in motion graphics, kind of exploring what generative real-time motion graphics looks like. I think the more immersive tech we get and the more used to immersive tech people get, the more opportunities there's going to be for that kind of motion graphics and creative coding and things like that are really where motion graphics are really interacting with the user. And I think that could be really cool. It's going to be hopefully a new frontier for it.
This video is brought to you by Envato, the unlimited creative subscription. The broadest range of categories, everything that you need to make great videos. Follow the link in the description and start creating now.
I think it's kind of a requirement that you put sound design into your visuals if you want to really make that impact.
Apple has a plan and a promise to make Apple carbon neutral. Wait, no, we've already done that.
It's time consuming, man. Most of the work that I do, it's based on music, so it's really synced to the beat.
I do struggle with audio quite a bit. It's my least favorite part of animation, but I have noticed that when I watch other people's videos and they put in a lot of time for the sound effects and choosing a really good music track, it just really amps up their piece and it really elevates it.
Probably 50% of the visuals is what you're hearing, which is kind of silly to say, but I think it's true.
Oh, I mean, it is the emotion, is it not? Sound in animation. If you've got bad sound or not very interesting sound, it can drop the interest in your project. It's part of it, you know. Sound is super important, I think.
I tend to just try and make things that I enjoy looking at. So I might have a color palette in mind and trying a lot of different variations. And if I land on something that I'm kind of happy with, where these colors are working well together, I think generally then I'll kind of isolate some of those colors and research them online. Seeing how actual designers, illustrators use color and put colors together, especially with text and typography again, because obviously the title graphics full of text, it is really beneficial because you can see just how other professionals are using color to do that.
Like typefaces, they have a language in and of themselves of how they look. They say different things.
How you animate the type also plays a big role in that. I would pick fonts, typically sans serif, because they're very clean, they're very readable, and I like to pick fonts that have like a big range of weights, so I can emphasize or like de-emphasize certain parts of a phrase. I'm a big proponent of having the animation match the tone or the style. So if it's a more serious video, then the type can't be too flashy, it can't be too dynamic, that sort of thing. It has to fit the tone of your video.
If you get a font that just is like, that's an amazing designed font, then half the work is done for you. You just are now the responsible person to take that font and make it work with whatever composition you're creating.
I think every day starts with finding a good mix first, like on NTS or SoundCloud, something to listen to.
When I first get a project, I'll read over the script, and then the first thing I do is I'll go on Pinterest and generate a mood board.
Two things that I usually do when I'm creating a motion graphics: log on into Behance, sort through new projects, see what is out there at the moment, see what things are trending.
The mood board will also influence the color scheme if there is no set color scheme.
The other one that I use is our library, Envato. Going into the motion templates is also like really good for me. Just sorting throughout all the motion templates by new or by recent. It's also like a good way to get inspiration.
I might do some sketches in a notebook first to just like get initial ideas out, especially if I'm like doing kind of a more involved animation with a storyboard.
And then from there, I'll design things in Photoshop or Illustrator, bring them into After Effects. In After Effects, I use stuff like FX Console, Flow, the Red Giant Suite.
Ease copy is just essential for me. Overlord is another big one. Motion 3, they're kind of the trifecta that I use every day.
I also use stuff like Notion to help organize my client's workflow. It's just, having everything really organized into different buckets helps me achieve the project in the best fashion.
One piece of advice that I got, which I still stick to: render it every day. Render it every time you think you've got to another step in the process, and then look at the render, watch the render, and then refine and refine and refine and render and refine till it's done.
You have to take a look at the little details to see that you're projecting what the brand stands for. But then again, it's just trial and error at some point. It's more like this is more art than science. So.
I always fall back on like CC Studio, who are now, I think they've rebranded to Daisy Chain. The kind of motion design that I love is really kind of the experimental stuff, and they're at the top of the game always in pushing that envelope. And so whatever they make, I'm pretty much salivating over.
Sky from Skymography and Mapal, both of those two are just creating masterpieces of not just tutorials, but videos. I mean, they clearly have film design backgrounds, and they put so much attention to detail in absolutely every piece of a video, not just the animation, but the design, the audio, The cinematography, really, really great, as well as Audrey Havey, who's also doing some really excellent design and animation tutorials on YouTube.
Yeah, I would say I'm really inspired by this creator called Ari Foruri. He does a lot of these like cool like 360 videos, but he also does kind of like motion graphics pieces. Like he's really famous for doing the match cut videos of like basketball or like football players, and you see them like a bunch of like pictures like stacked on each other, and it creates like this 360 movement. So I'm really influenced by like his experimental like film kind of like mixed media approach to it. I think it's really inventive and inspiring.
And then, you know, Never Sit Still out of Sydney, those guys are just a bunch of legends, and everything they make is such high class. So I'm always following them, but there's some smaller ones as well that I really like Rapper Prawn. They're a Galician duo, and they have this like very specific style, which is like kind of lo-fi, the same colors in everything. It's just kind of artistic, really.
I would also say another artist I'm really influenced by is Troy Brown. He's an awesome artist on Instagram that does cool subject collage, but he messes with like the sense of scale and like the proportions of his characters, so it kind of feels like a caricature. But and he mixes in a lot of like hip hop elements and really bright colors. So he's like messing with the sense of scale, but also like your sense of reality with these characters, because it's not just like a head and here's the mouth and in here, but he's always like moving things around, kind of like Pablo Picasso would. So I think it's really interesting and influential to me.